I do want to ask you about Jordan Peterson because you're a guy that I respect. I respect your opinion. And Jordan is a guy who I've been listening to for probably a decade now. I've read his book twice, actually, The 12 Rules of Life.
Right.
Seen many hours of his interviews, and when you're talking about is a guy connected to his heart, a lot of times when I'm listening to him, I do feel his connection to his heart. Other times I feel him all twisted up in the land of intellectualism, and other times I feel him very angry, and almost like lashing out, and I question whether he's angry as from a protector space, because that's kind of how he frames it, as like, hey, I'm protecting us, folks. I'm protecting us from these dark sides of humanity. And I sometimes trust that. I'm like, like, I don't want us to go too far. And I do think we need some checks and balances here to say, like, oh, wait a minute, like, have we gone too far on this subject? And so how do you see JP, and how do you see that perhaps he's gone? Because I assume you feel the same about him, that he's not all bad, and that there is like maybe a good foundation there.
Yeah. So thank you, because that's another guy that I also have followed and I've seen value in, is the same as you, right? And then I did see this divergence over the last few years, right, where I felt the same thing. Like there was some of his stuff was coming more from this angry state because of the state of the world, right? And I was like, okay, well, it makes sense. Do I take that in, but it felt off a bit, right? Because it felt like he hadn't really. There was other interference there, whether it was his own stuff or whether he's being influenced by other people getting him to do that, right? I wasn't totally sure, but I and my teaching on that, which probably you agree with too, is like, you have to trust your own intuition on those things and then really feel, does that feel, truthful to you? And if not, then don't take it in, right? Unless it feels really strong, then don't take it in as valid information. So I would listen, I've been listening recently and just listening to more of him, and I would see these threads too, where it was off a bit on the topic, more inflammatory, like, I know with the transgender stuff and all that, right? He gets into that, but it can get to be where he's kind of, again, he's kind of doing it more for the hits too. Like he's in that mode as well with Andrew Tate, where he knows that he's smart, and he knows that, that he's got a good way of speaking and good community influence, right, that he's connecting to. So there's that element too, which is Russell Brand is doing the same thing, right, where he's kind of quickly putting out these inflammatory statements. And again, he's not like he's just saying that these are wrong things that he's saying, but he's taking sort of a lot of inflammatory stuff, a lot of conspiracy theories, a lot of things that are partial truths, and it just throwing them all into a pot, right? And what I find then, that's another red flag for me, is again for men to watch out for, is to when people are throwing out these inflammatory extreme statements that are not versed in the study of all perspectives, right? Like, honestly, we have to look at every perspective. Like, that's why I do a lot of predatory and victim and work with both of them, because those are two extreme perspectives, right? And then I'm trying to bridge that and help the healing so that both of them can come and break the cycle of it, right? And sometimes I find with these guys, what they're doing is they're actually inflaming their people or their clients or their community, rather than helping the healing process of what we need to do as a society, right? Because one last thing I'll say about that is, on the bigger, we're looking, if this is what's going on, if this sickness a bit that I see is going on in the world, it's impacting people. So we have to start changing from within, change our own inner sicknesses and healings, and just shift that. And that's how we shift the world. Not, I find some of these guys are doing it too externally, and they're exploiting it for the profit, right, of the dollar that comes underneath all of it.
Yeah, there's, Russell's a whole other call, but with JP, there's the times where I'm like sure that something is off is when I feel like he's being hurtful. Yeah, I'm on Twitter now. He'll put out a tweet, or there will be a YouTube video, and I can feel that he's like lashing out, or he's trying to hurt somebody, or there's a time where I'm like, I'm like, how is this not going to land? Like, it's just like trying to hurt somebody. And when that's happening, I'm like, that's not the that's not the grounded father. That's
then you're feeling that there's another ulterior motive or something going on. So, and it may, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's not fully conscious of it, and he's doing it from a place of his own inner anger that's not integrated or whatever, right? So that could be the case, but there could be a combination of that going on with some other, when these guys are in this big a media realm, right? There's so many influences going on. It's almost for us to dissect it is almost too confusing, right? So I just say, hey, trust that deeper gut feeling when you feel into that, and you're really you exactly how you described it. That's kind of what I've been going through. Like, sometimes it's like, wow, bang, he's right on, and other times, no, this is not ringing true, or the statements, right? Then that to me is like, okay, I'm not really going to take too much of this because it's not really authentic to me as the way it could be. It doesn't mean he's certainly gonna then, to people who gravitate to that, he's going to get, a rise out of that. And that might be one of his intentions for some of the extreme comments, because comments is he's going to get a charge, right? And then that gets people riled up, and then they get hitting and tweeting more and doing all that fun stuff.
I think as a creator, reading your comments and your feedback that you get back from people is actually, right? Like when you're at that level, when you've got many millions of followers and you go reading your comments, there's always haters, and there's always people who are going to cut. They're going to, and in JP's case, like, you have people who literally attack and make your family feel unsafe because they feel like your ideas are threatening their existence. And so what I feel like happened with him over the last few years was he, was reading comments, but also getting hate mail and getting a lot of this negative feedback that was overwhelming for the system. And like, I feel like he's protecting himself when he's lashing out like that and bringing that anger. And I get it. I get how that would happen, because I certainly wouldn't want to be in his shoes, holding the intellectual positions he holds, because they create so much backlash. And so I feel like I understand how it's happened, but I don't.
Exactly.
The best thing I've heard is Joe Rogan's telling him, "Hey man, don't read your comments. Don't read your YouTube comments."
And I actually, speaking of Joe Rogan, he actually has a pretty good philosophy on that. Like, he's in the big realm, but he's managing to navigate through some pretty heavy topics, right? And so there is some learnings there that I see, right? Because again, when you go in the extreme, like if we look at the Andrew Tate, where JP has gone, again, there's some backlashes that can come from that. Like you said, like there can be the death threats or the things like that go on. Andrew Tate, right, he had to go through this whole jail experience. Trump is going through, indictment stuff. So anytime you do that, there's extreme consequences as well. So Rogan, he floats on the edge, right? So, but he's managing to take on some big stuff and then still stay in relation with a lot of different people and getting himself a large following on Spotify and other modalities, right? So, all to him.
Very respectable how he has managed his position and managed to not go crazy in the process. I have listened to probably thousands of hours of him, I feel like I'm starting to get him as a human being, and there are some really useful pieces that he's given me in my life. And he was part of my motivation for starting the podcast. I was like, I didn't know where my podcast was going to go. I just started creating,
good for you.
And look what happened.
Yeah, and you're right. And that's, I think he's been an influence for a lot of men in a way to start their podcast it seems to be men that I've seen that have been influenced by him seem to be a bit more rounded and not so rough around the edges, right? Like, not with that charge of like that they got to like exploit or shame somebody else or put somebody down to, so that's what I look for too, right? Again, as a man, we all want to be discerning. So let's follow men that are actually more balanced and more connected to the heart and can diversify and hear all perspectives and not just say like, this is the way and this is right. If that yang fucking that old school way of like, this is the way. We've got to end that of like, hey, there are many ways, and we want to follow what's going to be really complete and serve us in all our relations. And that's what we're practicing as men.